In the 1930s, Germany, of course, was starting to be taken over by Nazism, and they wanted to get the hell out. So they did, and they fled to America. And when they came to America, they set themselves up with jobs at none other than, drumroll please, Columbia University. Of course, it's Columbia University, but they set themselves up there and they started teaching their Marxist ideologies. And they started, you know, this whole flow of what became known as critical theory, which branched out later on into various different types of things, critical race theory being one of them. But basically, critical theory is kind of like Marxism and how everything is based off of struggle, but rather than true Marxism, where everything is based off of struggle between the proletariats and the bourgeoisie, the rich and the poor, the haves and the have-nots, Frankfurt Marxism is cultural, right? They blame it on racial struggles. They do blame it on economic struggles as well. Um, but they blame it on various other kinds of things. Race being a big denominator, religion being a big denominator in it, and using marginalized groups and people, what they called marginalized groups of people. They realized that America was not going to be taken the way that traditional Marxism works. America, you weren't going to be able to unite the workers and get them to rise against the government because America was in a very prosperous time. We had just come out of the Gilded Age. We had just World War One. We had just come through the Great Depression on the other side, getting strong. America had its prosperity again, and so they realized that they were going to have to do it by shifting from labor to culture. And so they did, and that's where critical theory comes alive, which is based off of deconstructing all of these foundational normals that we as Americans have. And it's basically an ideological inversion of everything. And so whenever they knew that classical Marxism wasn't going to take off in America, they targeted family, religion, education, and personal identities, right? And that goal, like I said, was to destabilize our foundational normals. And they were going to do it through critique. They were going to do it through trying to make you feel small. They were going to use language as one of their main weapons, and they were going to use emotions as one of their main weapons. And so the curriculum shifted from how to think into what to think. And merit was replaced by identity, right? Suddenly people didn't get ahead anymore because they were better at the job, right? Those who were unable to get ahead, they flipped the framing to where they weren't getting ahead because they were oppressed, not because they didn't work hard enough, not because they didn't actually pursue the education, skills, or whatever was necessary to move up and to make great things. If you couldn't do that, well, it's because the white man is holding you back, or because the Catholics hate the Jews, and the Jews are holding you back because the Jews control everything, and that's their ideology. That's the way that they tried to work. The truth became replaced by all of their narratives, and like I said, that was a deconstruction of the family unit, right? You went from Ozzie and Harriet and Leave It to Beaver and all of these television shows that showed strong nuclear family units, right? Those got torn apart in the 60s and the 70s because you started seeing shows come on like One Day at a Time, which was about a divorced mom raising two teenage daughters. Alice, which was about a waitress at a restaurant who was divorced and raising her son by herself. And they started to glamorize the deconstruction of the family unit. Men started being accused of being deadbeat fathers. Men became toxic. And the reason why they targeted all of this through education and eventually the media there was because after World War II, America believed anything the government told them. They believed anything the teachers told them because we had just come through so much and had been delivered through so much by a government that was strong and powerful and cohesive enough to win. We believed everything, or Americans believed everything they were being told. And so that was just opened up the door for Marxism to walk right on through. And when they started to shift the culture, change the narrative, it started to change a generation of people, especially through the school system, right? Professors became ideological agents, right? Rather than people who were trying to teach kids how to learn and how to think and how to succeed and how to survive and how to make something of themselves in the world. They were teaching them social sciences, they call it, white versus black, Catholic versus Jew versus Christian versus Islam, and they started a dismantling. And suddenly Americans weren't cohesive anymore. You started having this group of people, especially after they started coming through the colleges, a generation of people through the colleges, and all of a sudden they started questioning, why we were in Vietnam, why are we out there? They would frame it, rather than us fighting for an oppressed people, they would frame it as if we were the oppressors and we're over there killing babies. And that was the narrative shift. And so then you had soldiers coming home, and they were all of a sudden called baby killers rather than freedom fighters, and that's the bullying. That's the narrative. That's the critiquing that critical theory brought along with it. We're going to destroy your heroes. We're going, and you see that going on today. We're going to destroy your heroes. And then they tear down all these statues and claim that, we tore down Thomas Jefferson. Yeah, sure, he was a great president of the United States and one of the founding fathers here, but we tore down his statue and we don't like him because he was a slave owner. Tearing down history makes us forget history. And that's what they really want to do. They want to make us forget history, because then when the Marxist influence takes over, right, we won't remember what happened to the Soviet Union. We won't remember what happened to East Germany. We won't remember what happened to Maoist China, because they've already erased the history. And not only did they erase the history, they had half of us who are clamoring for it to be erased. They quit teaching cursive writing in school. Why? There's a lot of reasons why they say, but for me, I believe that it's because in several generations, nobody would know how to read the Constitution. Then it is what your professors say it is. It says what your professors say it says, right? And you can't go read it for yourself because you don't know how to read that strange language that's written on that paper. Just my thought and theory on that. I'll get off of it. See, this also went on and had a generational impact, right? Because through the media and through those television shows, and they started casting all of this doubt on everything. And the boomers, they were softened by this. They were softened by the institutional trust, right? Walter Cronkite was the final word and the final theory on everything. Now, while I believe Walter Cronkite to be a good man, I also believe that he left and retired because he wasn't going to put up with the Marxist stuff that they were trying to bring down the pipeline. He wasn't down with Mockingbird, if you know what I'm saying. So Generation X, while we were raised at the end of the Cold War and we were raised to be tough, after the Berlin Wall fell, we fell into the same problem that the boomers fell into, where they started trusting the government with everything. Well, for Generation X, you had the wall fall and suddenly, yay, we defeated communism. We defeated socialism. We defeated Marxism. Now let's turn our sights toward the desert and take on Islam. But Marxism wasn't defeated. It kept creeping its way in through the universities, working its way up through the institutions. And now you get here to where we are today, right? We've torn down statues, fly gay pride flags rather than American flags. And we say that the Pledge of Allegiance is an oath to authoritarianism. We say that, being an American is shameful. We say that the Constitution is oppressive. We say that the Bill of Rights is oppressive. And it's not. None of it is. This is the thought and the theory that has been put forward. And it starts in the universities, and it's currently in the universities. And as long as it keeps going, we're going to have problems with this because it's cultural. And we need to get the rot out of our culture. You're listening to Uncle Sam Saves America. I'm Uncle Sam.